Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the crash damaged Ducati 899 rebuild. In today's episode we're going to be doing everything we should have done in the last episode. In an earlier video I explained that we was going to send the forks off to be serviced and set up for our weight, but after watching a few videos online we're quite confident that we can do it ourselves. And something else that I've been putting off on this bike for quite a while is doing a valve clearance check, so a bit later on we're going to be taking off the rocker cover and seeing whether they're in spec or not. But before we do any of that, we're going to give the bike a good wash down. In the last episode, I put out some mats so I can start washing some of the bits down. And to be honest, there's probably a load of other stuff that's going to be getting done in between. So let's get into it. When we first bought this bike from the auction, one of the first things we noticed was on the rear swing arm, there was a bolt that had been ripped out. The thread had been stripped. So I'm going to use a tap and die set to re-tap the hole and make it like new again. Finally, I finished washing the bike. It took about 3 hours altogether, but it looks a lot cleaner now and we won't get covered in oil when we're working on it. I'm really happy with how well it cleaned up. As you see from the images before, all of this was covered in grime, oil, dirt. But with a bit of elbow grease, it's all looking like new again. I know that this is a track bike and the drivetrain areas always get really dirty and covered in grime. But because this is a Ducati and we're going over it, I thought it would be a good idea to take it all apart and clean it all. There's so many little areas of this engine that were covered in grime and dirt, but I've cleaned it all out and I think it looks so much better now. Now that I've washed the bike and retapped the swing arm, we can move on to the valve clearances. As I explained in the last episode, when we bought this bike from the auction, it never come with any service history, so we don't know when the valves were last done. These Ducatis come with desmodronic valves, which means that on each cam there are dedicated openers and closers, so they're a little bit more complicated than traditional cams. So we're going to be doing our own valve clearances on this bike, just so we are certain that the bike's good to ride and we don't grenade the engine. With a bit of luck, we won't have to change any of the shims or make any adjustments. Hopefully it's already been done. Here are some of the things that we're going to need to do this valve clearance. We've got brand new OEM Ducati gaskets, we've got torque wrenches, and then over here we've got the workshop manuals downloaded, and we're also going to use YouTube on another screen just to cross-reference what we're doing. Michael's just going through some of the specs and some of the numbers that we've got to look up when we're doing this valve clearance check. And we moved the ratchet straps that are holding up the bike to the back of the subframe just to give us more clearance when we're doing the valve check. Because in the workshop manual it says that you have to remove the rear subframe to do this service. But because we don't have a suspension linkage holding up the back of the bike, it would be impossible for us to do this because we got the bike suspended by ratchet straps. But fortunately, I watched some YouTube videos and you don't actually have to remove the subframe to do it. That's enough of me talking, let's get on with it. Amazing news, this cylinder is also in spec, so we ain't got to do anything now. We're just going to put the cap back on, torque up the bolts, and then that's the valve clearance is done. This metal plate is part of the crash bars. It got bent in the accident, so we've pressed it back into place so now it's straight, and then we filled in a small gap with a bit of JB weld. It doesn't look great at the minute, but I'm going to sand it and respray it and it should look like new again. And there's also this little piece as well that got damaged and it's a bit scratched up, so I'm going to sand it down and respray it. Really happy, guys, that the valves are in spec and we don't have to make any adjustments or do anything. We just put it back together and now we can ride the bike knowing that it's safe. This was a really big job that needed doing and now it's ticked off the list, which is good. And the crush bar that we bent back into place looks pretty decent. You can notice that there's a fresh line where the new spray paint's been, but I think it looks better than JB Weld. And it is what it is. We're not going to buy a whole new RNG crash kit because they're about £300. So we just fixed this one and it's good to go back on the bike. I'm also going to be putting new spark plugs in the bike. These are the old ones that come out of it. And to be honest, they look very bad. The bike's running very rich. They're black and covered in oil, which ain't a good sign. It's quite important with these 899s that you use standard copper plugs and not iridium new spark plugs. Now it's starting to get really exciting because we can start putting things back together. We're going to start off by putting the radiators and the fans on, and then we're going to do the exhaust. Over the last few episodes, I've been cleaning up the exhaust system and it looks like new again. There's loads of little bits of hardware and bolts that have been cleaned up, so that shouldn't be too difficult. And over here I've got the brakes that we wrapped up and boxed up in a previous episode. My brother did degrease them before he wrapped them up. But I'm going to give them a proper wash with some soap and water, dry them off and then get them ready to put back on the bike. And over here are the brake hoses that come on the bike. We did want to replace the brake hoses and we should replace them really. But these are quite good quality ones. They're steel braided Hell branded ones. Can't actually see the Hell. You can almost make out the Hell branding on there. To buy a new set of steel braided hose lines, it's about 130 quid. And we've spent quite a lot of money on the bike already. So we might just clean these up and put them back on the bike as they are. And to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of yellow for brake hoses. I'd much prefer the black or even a silver steel braided, I think looks good. But to be fair, there are a few little yellow bits on the bike. They do match the shock. And I guess you could say they match this little bit of wire in here. We're probably just going to save it for a future upgrade. Eventually we will upgrade the brakes. We might even upgrade the calipers at some point. We'll use that as an opportunity to upgrade the hoses. But for now, just to get the bike back up and running, we're going to put the old hoses back on with them cleaned up. I'm excited to get the suspension linkage back on the bike because then we can fit the shock. The rear shock's been cleaned up and it looks nice. The only downside is there's this little scuff right here. But when we bought the bike, it came with this carbon cover, which pops, which sits on there and it actually covers the scuff, which is nice. The only downside is when you look close, this carbon piece hasn't got the best finish on it. So I might sand it down with some wet and dry sandpaper and repolish it and see how it comes out. You probably can't see on the camera, but there's quite a bit of orange peel and scratches. In the meantime, I'm going to give this suspension linkage a wipe down. And finally start putting all of these bits back on to the bike. I'm really happy with how well the brakes come out. Calipers cleaned up really well. And in this box, we've got all the hardware to put the brakes back together. These are the brake pads that come out of the bike. They've got loads of life on them. I think they were brand new when we got the bike. And there's just loads of other brackets that got cleaned up earlier that look nice and new. And now that I've fitted the OEM suspension linkage, I think it looks so much better. We've also done the valve clearances and the spark plugs. Really glad to have the valve clearances done now. That's a big job out of the way. And that is it for today's episode, guys. It's starting to get really exciting now because there's loads of things we need to get on the bike. Down here next to me, I've got a big box of parts ready to go on the bike. It's full of OEM Ducati parts that we've been buying off of eBay over the last few weeks. That's all going to be going on the bike. Also behind me are the Termagoni exhausts I've been cleaning up. That they're ready to go on the bike, so that's exciting. And I know at the beginning of this episode, I started off with the forks and saying how we was going to do a fork service in this episode. But unfortunately, there was just too much to do and I couldn't fit it all into this episode. So next time, we're definitely going to be doing a fork service and getting them on the bike. I'm quite excited for the next episode because we're going to be assembling our powder coated wheels. I managed to get the bearing housing fixed, so now we can start getting them built and put back on the bike. And overall, it's just really exciting because lots of little parts are coming together now and we're getting ready to put them all back on the bike. Just want to quickly say a massive thank you to all the new subscribers and anyone who's commenting and liking the videos. It really helps. I'll see you in the next one.